Hey guys, this is John. I'm back at the hotel. Round one is in the books. And unfortunately, it was not good for the home team. I lost. It was a long game. Finished about an hour ago. Went the distance, probably 3.5 hours. And I was playing International Master Zhurabek Kamrakulov. I believe he's from Uzbekistan. Could be wrong about that, but I apologize to him if I am. I think it's Uzbekistan, though. He's rated 2498. He's been over 2,500, actually well over 2,500. I believe he was up to 2440 or 50 many years ago, and must be working on his Grandmaster title, trying to lock that down. So I'm going to briefly give my thoughts on the game. I'm not going to analyze the game or put up any superimposed board or anything. I just don't have the time. This is 2 rounds per day. My next game is at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. But if you want to click through the game and see what I'm talking about here, I'll put the game in the description below or in the top comment. I'll pin it. So I played the classical Sicilian against his e4, and the opening went very well. I thought I equalized without any trouble. He played this Sozin variation, bishop c4, which in the past has had a fearsome reputation because there's this plan of playing queen e2 and castling queenside for white, and it often leads to very sharp opposite side castling positions, usually with white attacking. But the way he played it, he tried to stop me from playing b5. He played this quick a4 move and then ended up castling short, which I don't believe should give black any problems. So I felt really good out of the opening. In fact, I thought I was even a bit better, just slightly for choice. In reality, it was probably close to equal. I played this interesting plan where I went knight b4 and then played for d5, which in the Sicilian is always a break you should be looking to achieve, d5. And my idea was to accept an isolated pawn if he wanted to give me one. He could play e takes d5, and I was going to play e takes d5 in reply, and I'd have very good piece activity. But instead he played bishop g5, and we got some liquidation. I took on e4, we swapped a couple minor pieces, then the queens came off the board. We drifted into this endgame where he has this pawn on a4, which I thought was a weakness. In reality, maybe the game was a little closer to equality than I thought, but it kind of felt like I was pressing throughout the middle game and going into the end game. Mainly because my king was closer. In addition to that a4 pawn, my king was a little closer to the center. His was still on h1. So after a couple other pieces came off, we got into this rook and bishop versus rook and bishop situation where I thought there was a chance that I could win one of his pawns on the queen side or really tie him up. Instead, what he did, he ended up giving up his c-pawn. So I played this plan of bishop a4 into b3, and I had 2 pieces attacking his c4 pawn. And to my surprise, he just gave that pawn up. And in the process, even traded rooks. So we go into a bishop endgame where I had an extra pawn, just a full extra pawn. However, his king was very active. And I think my biggest misassessment of the game was the consequences of this bishop endgame. With correct play, I think it's a draw in several different ways. But his king marching in, especially when we were getting low on time, it was a little scary because I'm almost bound to lose my a-pawn, and I have to rely on counterplay with my pawn majority in the center and on the king side, the 4 versus 3. I believe what I should have done, at some point I should have just put my bishop on the h1, a8 diagonal. There are a couple of moments where I could have played bishop b7, which would have been useful hitting his pawn on g2. Try to force him to play g3. Force his pawn up to g3, so when I push my pawns on the king side, I'm making contact with his pawns easier. Instead, though, what happened is, so he won my a-pawn. I was playing my king up the board and trying to push my kingside pawns as well, trying to create my own pass pawn because he now had a pass b-pawn. We got into this extremely sharp situation where I was relying on my f-pawn and he was relying on his b-pawn. And right at the end, the big move that I missed is that when I played f3, my pawn being 2 squares away from promotion, he can actually just ignore it and play b6 as he did in the game. We were both very low on time at that point. I was actually wondering why he was playing into that line because it just looked confusing to me. I was like, f3 must be good here. You're going to take the pawn and I can take back with my pawn or the bishop. Either way, it's looking good. Instead, though, he just plays b6, and there's this pawn tension between my pawn on f3 and his pawn on g2. If I take that pawn, though, he can play bishop takes g2, and then his b-pawn is free to march up the board, and I'm losing. And the thing I missed originally when I went into that line is that if I play f2, he has bishop a6, which is a beautiful move because not only does it stop me from queening on f1, but also his pawn is ready to go too. b7, b8, queen. It's just everything works out perfectly there. And my king is even on the worst possible square. It's on e5, so whenever he queens, it's with check. So, for instance, there was some line I was calculating where that was relevant. Yeah, I think it's if I play bishop e2 in response to bishop a6, he can just push his pawn. I take on a6, he queens with check, and game over. I don't even get a chance to push my pawns. So I tried something where I played bishop e2 looking to get my bishop to a6 right after he played b6, but then he had this nice shot, bishop takes f3, which I saw when I was playing bishop e2, but my time was running out, just didn't have anything else to do. It is losing. But bishop takes f3 is a really nice move, so definitely check that one out. And then, yeah, it's over. If I take back with the bishop, then g takes f3, g takes f3, b7, f2, and that's the variation where my king being on e5 really hurts me because he queens with check. If it wasn't with check, I could queen and then probably it would be a draw. So these are frustrating games to lose because I feel I played well in the opening and middle game, but I got squeezed out in the end game. He just understood the end game better than me. So starting a tournament with a loss, never fun, but I will have the white pieces tomorrow against Grandmaster Pavlo Vorontsov from the Ukraine. He's the highest rated player in the field. So just gotta try to start anew, get some good sleep. I'm gonna go to the gym real briefly here. There's a gym in the hotel. When you're playing a tournament like this, 2 rounds per day, there's almost no time in between games to do anything other than grab something to eat, get caffeinated if you choose to do that, and you guys know I love to do that, especially my coffee, or maybe rest for a little bit. I'm gonna try to mix it up and go to the gym in the evenings when I can, just because I do that at home, so I feel it's a good way to wind down. But yeah, not a whole lot of time for other things. So hope you guys got something from this analysis. Thank you again for all the support. I really appreciate it. I'll do my best in these remaining games, and I'll be updating you guys along the way. All right, guys. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.